what I normally do is run something called the Environmental Health Clinic, which is an idea that begins with the question of, there's some pretty challenging environmental issues that we face, and what do we do? I'm here to kind of explore what it is we can do, and that's what this workshop is about, to do small-scale experiments that could inform how we can improve our local environment. So what I discussed with Kathy is that we would look at urban infrastructure for non-humans, because non-human organisms are something we depend on. Biodiversity, typically talk about biodiversity as something, the loss of biodiversity in the Amazon rainforest or in the Tiger Plains, or that's the way we scientifically talk about. Little work is being done on the urban biodiversity on which we all depend. How many mouthfuls of your food depends on pollinators, the insects, the biodiversity around here? About half of your food depends on free labor of insect pollinators. That's every second mouthful you take. You can thank the insects. Anybody paid them lately for the work they've been doing for you? No? Okay. So the idea that we can and should start to rethink our urban infrastructure to accommodate these non-humans that we critically depend on is a challenge that we all need to take up, and that very few people are doing it. Let me introduce you to something called the butterfly bridge. What characterizes urban biodiversity is patches of habitat. Counterintuitively, our urban contexts are incredibly diverse. There's a tremendous biodiversity. They did a big study in France around Paris in 2010 for the Year of Biodiversity. And they looked at, it was a huge citizen science project where they looked at how many insects were in metropolitan Paris and how many were in the surrounding rural areas. This was in terms of the species number and the populations. There was about 10 times more biodiversity and intense population in metropolitan Paris as opposed to the farming areas, right? That tells us, it was the first really good comprehensive study of just how important urban biodiversity is. So we're not talking about nature and pollinators out there somewhere in the forest. We're talking about them here in our blocks, in our backyards, in our parks, in our urban context. That's where we have the greatest bank of biodiversity. What characterizes urban biodiversity is these little islands, little fractured islands that don't connect. And so they're genetically isolated populations that become kind of frail because there's no exchange. So the Butterfly Bridge, which is one of the projects we're working on here, connects those patches of habitat. And you can see that's basically what it is, a butterfly bridge. It works because we plant butterfly attracting plants in the bridge, and the butterflies bounce along the bridge. Instead of being smeared on your windscreen, right, in that nice little tap you get when they splatter on your windscreen, they actually go safely from one patch of habitat to another patch of habitat. We had about 30 butterflies per hour crossing the one in Washington we set up here as an example, where it went from one park across to another park, safely guiding an overpass to provide safe passage for butterflies. So that's one example. And what's interesting about that example is, does it look expensive? Does it look hard to do? Does it look like something we can do? We're going to. So we are. And we can make a significant difference with our urban biodiversity by connecting patches of habitat in this way.